All right, so I'm going to be discussing my blaster build for Magnus Hetch. He's the character that I was farming with yesterday, and we're going to look at his build a little bit. Okay, so let's go ahead and just pop to our base. Where's that portal at? There it is, over here. Bounce. All right, let's go chill on the base while we have a talk. Hope everybody's doing good this morning. I'm in a particularly good mood. All right. So we'll just park here, scroll out a little bit. I'm going to turn off all my stuff. All right, so this is Magnus Hetch. He was the last leader of the Hell's Guardians on live before it shut down. And he was the 4th leader of the Hell's Guardians. So it wasn't me, leading the Hell's... Well, I did lead the Hell's Guardians at the end, but there was 3 other supergroup leaders before me. And I was the last one to run the place until it shut down at the end. We managed to make it to the top 100 supergroups. We held slot 96 for 6 months. Yeah, 96 isn't great, but hey, who can brag about being on the top 100? All right. So back then, to get on the top 100, you needed a specific number of active players. See, at one point it was it capped at 75, but then they removed the cap. And so we had 85 players with 60% activity level. That's most of the SG was active all the time. We could field 2 full teams at any part of the day. And we had mission teams, we had PvP teams. We held dominance in Bloody Bay and Siren's Call for a long time. I can't say we were the best, but we did run a militant supergroup. From the start, from the very first leader of the supergroup, he created a military-based supergroup. And we all trained together. We went to the arena. We did one-on-one fights and various other fights, just to train together, and learn how each one of us, worked, and our tactics and our play styles. And we blended ourselves together and we built a crack team. We all did this. This was the standard operating procedure for the supergroup. And so every team that was on, everybody who was online had to spend at least an hour a day in training, in combat training, against each other, in PvP combat training at the arena, and so on and so forth. One of the other policies was all members are welcome to utilize any item in the supergroup storage, like salvage and enhancements. But the policy was take what you need, put something back. That way we always had enough for all our needs. And our motto was stronger together. And we're only as strong as the weakest among us. Standard, that's, stuff that they taught me when I went to basic training in my A school in the Army. We are only as strong as the weakest among us. So we got together and we helped out those weakest among us and built them up, helped them with their builds, helped them with their enhancements. There wasn't a whole lot of sets back on live, so we did what we could with what we had. Anyway, so let's look at this current build that I'm using. I do farm with this build, and I run missions and task forces and things like that. But I've been called a blanker instead of a blapper, more tank than scrapper, because the original concept behind a blaster is that they were like a blaster who functioned like a scrapper. have And the focus was on the secondary um, power set, building up the attacks on the secondary power set. On this one, I have a blend of uh, primary and secondary attacks. So I have equal amounts, well, not equal amounts, but I have ranged and melee. And what I found, the original build was mostly melee, working on the martial combat, because this is a radiation blast martial combat build. And what I found, maybe I'm wrong, but this is what I saw on my build, that most of the damage was coming from the primary power set, the radiation blast. So what I did is I did a respect, and I included more of the radiation blast attacks. X-ray beam is like the first one. Let's see, we pop up the build here. Okay, so you have a. All right, this is the wrong build. Let me go ahead and open up another one. Okay, COH builds. Oh, where'd it go? Thought I had it open already. All right, so you had neutrino bolt, X-ray beam. You can pick one or the other, and one from the martial combat. So you have to pick one from each one to start. So it's either neutrino bolt, an X-ray beam, key push, and storm kick. Key push is an interesting one, but I'd rather have more damaging power. So X-ray beam does more damage than neutrino bolt, and storm kick more damage than key push. And what that translates into game is like this. Okay. Range, damage, energy, foe, defense. All right, get out of that. Powers. It's not telling me. But anyway, it'll say like damage, how much damage it does is recharge. So it's a minimum fast. It's not going to do a lot of damage. If it's moderate, and I hear it beeping. Give me one moment. I'll be right back. All right, I'm back. So my microwave was running. It decided it's going to trip out on me, and So I think it's on its last legs. Every time I close the door, it turns on and starts running. When I went over there, it was like at 4 minutes defrost. Then I opened the door, I turned it off, reset it, closed the door, and then it started cooking. And then there was like a 30-second timer on it. So I think there's an issue with it. Anyway, back to what I was talking about. So you want to focus on, you know, whatever attacks provide the highest damage and the best recharge. And so this isn't exactly the best build, but for my play style, it works pretty good. And atypical for a farm build, you want to focus on as many of the winter sets as you possibly can, like Superior Winter's Bite, Avalanche, the Blistering Cold. Now I'm not sure if Ragnarok is no, Ragnarok is not a winter set, nor is Hecatomb, but they do offer fire and cold resistance, and that's what you want. You want as much fire resistance and defense as you possibly can get in your build if you plan to do any kind of farming with it. You know, and I assume that Atomic Blast can probably be improved. So each two pieces of a set provides a different buff. Like, say for example, Fury of the Gladiator offers it increases fire and cold resistance by 3.75, and then for the PvP side, it grants the user a 10% regenerate resistance to slow effects. I'm sorry, still learning how to read, and so on and so forth. Ragnarok improves your recovery by 4%, so on and so forth. Let's scroll down here. Now I do have 3 concealment three of the concealment abilities, and I have Luck of the Gamblers, defense, increased global recharge, 3 in each one. You don't have to use an ability to get the set bonus. Now, say for example, this one here, Luck of the Gambler, defense, global, increased global recharge speed. Now that is always on. You don't have to activate a power to get that, it's always on. Now down below on the set bonuses, it says like if you have 2 pieces, you get improves your regeneration rate by 10%, like up here on infiltration. I get 10% regeneration rate, and so on and so forth. And so you got to look at what the set bonuses are and what the set power offers you. And for like your fire resistance, you want your Aegis. And this is important because if you have 5 pieces of this set, you get 2 instances of fire and cold defense. Both will up your fire and cold defense by 3.13% and area effect defense by 1.565%. So if you have 5 pieces of this set, you also get increases lethal and smashing resistance by 3%, and like I said, 2 instances of increased area effect defense by 3.13%. That's where you get most of your defense. Now, looking at the totals on the build, see, it's not that fancy as far as the defense goes, but it's a 50%, 50.23% for its fire and cold, and 41.16% for its AoE. And then it's soft capped for a blaster at 70.75. I think that's a soft cap for fire for a blaster. And then, of course, you got your endurance, recovery, endurance usage, and maximum endurance, which is your default 100%. I use 2.56 points of endurance per second. If I can get it to show up something. And this dark blue here is my base, and the light blue here is everything that affects my endurance recovery, which is probably like ageless core epiphany, which is plus endurance plus recharge rate plus recovery. If I turn that off, see that light blue line goes down. Now it's very important. You want to try and get your base endurance and your static endurance recovery. Static is always on. You know that. So whatever affects this blue line and doesn't turn off, like Asia's core epiphany is a toggle. It turns on, runs for a few minutes, and it turns off. So you want to get your base and this blue line here as high as possible by comparison to your use. If your endurance use exceeds your recovery, you're going to burn out of your endurance really quickly. I have a tank that is really good as far as doing damage. You know, I tweaked my I use a rad tank for a lot of farming and missions and stuff. I tweaked it so it maintains the defense, you know, ability and resistance of a tank, but does brute level damage. And well, I gotta be honest, it's a little bit more squishy than a standard tank because I tweaked some of those defenses and resistances so I can bump up how much bump up his damage output. But anyways, one of my tanks will sit idle and run out of endurance. So it's important to make sure you keep your ageless core epiphany and blue and enough blues on hand to get you through. Because once your toggles drop and your defenses drop, you're done. So I'm sure this build can be improved. If it can, it's outside of my experience and ability to do. I mean, I've asked a lot of people if it can be improved, and most of the time I'm not getting any response, or the improvements that I'm offered drops its ability to put out damage and its defense and resistances. So I'm not sure they understand what I'm asking. So miscellaneous buffs, a lot of these are also affected by your incarnates and things like that. So he does for Blaster modest damage at 288%. I tried to get it up to 300%, but I just couldn't do it. Haste is 228.75%. That's pretty good. And his to hit is off the chart. Run speed, jump height. Now I use infiltration. And not going to show it. Sprint. And I do use athletic run. So athletic run, sprint, and then on top of infiltration. Okay, we get out of that. We go over to powers, combat attributes, movement. Okay, I turned off all my travels, and now only thing that's affecting my speed, jump height, and flying and all that is whatever's in the set. So base running speed is 23.6. Flights, I don't really fly without a jetpack. I don't have an actual travel power, so I opted out of that because I figured between infiltration, sprint, and athletic run, I'm fast enough. I use mission teleport and things like that if I want to get to a mission fast, if it's recharged. Now, all these three stack, but as far as your running speed, only the highest two will affect your running speed. However, your jumping speed will also be affected, and so on. So whatever's not affecting your run speed will affect your jump speed and your max jump height. So that's what I use to get around. It works for me. And like I said earlier, I have been jokingly, I take these as a joke. I've been called blanker and been said to be taking blapping to the next level. I don't consider myself all that good. When most blasters, you have to be very special to be able to tank by yourself in a farm. And most people will say a blaster can't do it without a tank, without tank support. And for me and my blaster, I find that pretty true. But usually what I'll do is if all my stuff is fully charged up, I can go in, I can pop my Radiate, my Atomic Blast, my Melt Armor, and Ion Final Judgment. And if all those are fully charged, I can usually pull 3 mobs, pop all my AoEs, and have basically the equivalent of a mob and a half. And by that time, my radiation will have done its job on reducing the defense of my target. So I can usually blow through them pretty quick. And Irradiate has a pretty fast recharge of 9 seconds. Thanks to the Luck of the Gambler's global recharge and things like that. And other things. And I don't consider the build the best. And I don't consider myself all that good. But, it's nice when people acknowledge, your ability. And even if it seems like a joke, they noticed. And that makes me feel good that my build stands out. So on my health, I have 2 Numinous Convalescence. I'm sorry. Yeah, 2 Numinous Convalescence for the regeneration of 12%. Then I have Regenerate Tissue for regeneration. Then I have Preventive Medicine Absorb proc. And Panacea, chance for hit points, endurance. Now, I have been debating those last 2 because there's probably a better combination I could use to pump up my regeneration. And then on stamina, I have endurance modification and chance to heal self. So I don't really have a whole lot of endurance coming off the build, but I have a lot of regeneration. Combat jumping, there's more regeneration. And then for a shield wall regeneration, 10%. And then if I was in PvP, recovery by 2.5%. What's down here? Steadfast protection, resistance defense. That is a very good piece to have because it buffs up both resistance and defense. It's unique, so you can only have one in your build. And enhances the damage resistance of a power by 16.3% and increases overall defense by 3.3%. Excuse me, I'm talking more than I normally do. Throat's dry. And then, of course, the 7.5% max hit points for Unbreakable Guard. Then teleport protection plus defense all. The defense all is pretty good because it gives you across the board defense on everything, but you don't really need the teleport protection in a farm. But some missions and task force have enemies that will try and teleport you, so it's nice to have because this character does do all content. Then of course the ages for the resistance endurance, um, resistance and recharge, and psionic statics resistance. Now I can probably remove that one and put in, say, something like resistance recharge or endurance recharge or resistance. But since this character does all content, Arachnos has a lot of units that do side damage, so it's nice to have a little bit of side, defense and resistance there. Then, of course, reactive defenses is a good one to have. It improves the recharge time of all your powers by 8.75%. Of course, smashing and lethal. Okay, increases fire and cold resistance by 3%. Grants you a 3.75 discount to all endurance costs, so that's helpful. Now, when I originally built this tune, before I started tweaking it for farming, it was able to effectively solo smashing and lethal farms without any help. But then I tweaked it to go do fire farming because it was just hard to find people to farm with and smashing lethal, and everybody wants to sit at the door, and I find that very tedious. It's like, do you have no other characters that you can't do anything else, just sit at the door? It's not a big deal or anything. I mean, it's nice to have hitters on, and most of the time when I'm farming, I'm going for speed. Faster the better. Turn and burn. Get those farms, those AEs turned over and burned through. And you can't really run a speed farm with your team sitting at the door. Now, I will allow, some privileges to folks on my Twitch stream who join my team and personal friends inside the game. But anyway, reactive defenses is a good one to have. Just because it has, like I said, improves the recharge time of all your powers and your discount to endurance costs. And on maneuvers, you got your 2 Luck the Gamblers for defense, endurance, and global recharge. And there's that improves your regeneration by 10%. Now, the most you can get you can use 5 Luck of the Gamblers defense global recharge. That is the max. You can slot as many as you can, but you only get the bonuses from 5 total, no more than 5. And then assault, it only takes, an endurance reduction. That's all it takes. Allowed enhancements, reduce endurance costs, enhance recharge speed. So you could put a second slot in there and put recharge speed in there, but it recharges pretty fast on its own. Now you're probably looking at tactics and wondering, why did I slot 3 in tactics? Well, you got these 2 adjusted targeting. If you got 2 pieces, you get increases damage by 2%. And then Gauss against synchronized fire control, a chance for buildup. That's why I have 3. Then down here you have bonfire, melt armor, undermine defenses, which is a defense debuff. 2 of those will increase damage by 2%. It's not a big boost, but it is a boost. And I probably could have done something different with that one. And then fire shield, I use impervium armor, which is improves your recovery rate by 2.5%, sonic defense by 1.88, maximum endurance increases fire and cold. There's that increases fire and cold resistance by 3.75%. Now, a fire and cold resistance of 3% is pretty average. And of course there's that psionic resistance. I probably could have skipped that one and used endurance recharge. Not a big deal. And then bonfire, there's that a winter set. Now the winter sets, like I said, they will usually offer fire and cold resistance, and on your sixth piece will give you fire and cold defense. So if you're going to use the winter sets, you want to use all 6. So this is Superior Frozen Blast. Let's pop over to here to Superior Blistering Cold. Let me see, it goes 15% resistance to slow effects, improve recovery by 4%, increases fire and cold resistance by 6%. And then on your 6th piece, you get increases fire and cold defense by 5%. See, let's look over here. There you go. 3 pieces gives fire and cold resistance 6% and 5% defense for fire and cold. So that's on par, those 2 sets. Let's go up to Winter's Bite. There you go. Increases fire and cold resistance right off the top with 2 pieces at 6%. And then after your 6th piece, you get increases fire and cold defense by 5%. Boom. There you go. Resistance and defense. Same thing for right here. Avalanche. 3 pieces. Fire and cold resistance by 6%. After your 6th piece, you get fire and cold defense by 5%. See the pattern? So the winter sets, you want to have as many as you can possibly slot, and you want all 6. Then you go Hecatome. It's after 3 pieces, you get fire and cold resistance by 6%. But that's all it offers, is that resistance for fire and cold. But it does improve the accuracy of all your powers by 15% and the recharge time of all your powers by 10%. And your recovery, so that's really good for helping your endurance recovery. Ragnarok. I don't know if they consider these winter sets, but it doesn't see like a... It says Superior Winter's Bite. And you have Blistering Cold and Avalanche. These are all winter sets, as well as that one. So these other ones aren't winter sets, but they do offer, after 3 pieces, increases fire and cold resistance by 6%. And then you got, like I said, your recovery. I'm sorry. Improves the accuracy of all your powers by 15%. Improves the recharge time. Then a Devastation. There's that regeneration 12%. Increases maximum health by 2.5. Increases damage by 3%. Oop, there it goes. Fire and cold resistance. So if it offers a high resistance and defense for fire and cold, you want to try and incorporate it into your build. Because if you want to do fire farming, you want as much, like I said before, as much fire resistance and fire defense, as much as that as you possibly can. You know, then you go Hecatome, fire and cold resistance by 6. You know, accuracy improves the accuracy by 15. Improves recharge time by 10%. So recharge, recovery, regeneration, and as much fire and cold resistance and defense as you possibly can put in your build. Because any archetype and power set can farm. I've seen it. I'm a blaster. I do it. I've seen corruptors do it. I've seen controllers do it. You know, so on and so forth. You don't have to be a tank or a brute. Although they are helpful to have on hand because, like I said, you know, corruptors, blasters, controllers, defenders, those are all considered squishy tunes. I mean, it's possible to build them to do amazing things. But still, by far, the tunes that have the best defense and resistances are tanks and brutes. Tanks being the top of the list as far as resistances and defenses, because they're just built for it. But you can do other archetypes to farm. It's just you might need more support from a tank or a brute or a healer, and it's always good if you're speed farming to have a kinetic on hand. So, and I hope that answers some questions. You can reach me on Discord as Raw. My in-game global is at Helium3. And you're welcome to chat me up anytime. And I do have a Twitch Discord. That's the Garage. And an actual in-game supergroup Discord if you are interested. We are looking for active players who are willing to join the supergroup and be active in that supergroup, make it their home, and so on and so forth, rather than just use it as a parking lot for your alts. Hard to find people who are willing to dedicate to one supergroup. All right, so there's my contact info. Discord ID is Raw. In-game global is at Helium3. My Twitch Discord channel link and my in-game supergroup Discord link. So feel free to join me and chat me up if you have questions. I'm not the best character builder, but I can possibly put you on the right track. So Hammerstone is a personal friend of mine in the game. Well, I've not met this person in real life, but we have been friends in game for a few years. And he's a Dynamo 3000. He is a legit player, good tune builder. I enjoy his company. He tends to like to take long breaks and do some smoking, puffing. But and he'll join large teams, but he kind of prefers to be chill and run on smaller teams. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Each to their own. I'm old fashioned to the point where I like large teams, but it's hard to find good teams nowadays. You got those folks who identify themselves as rebels and they're not team players. Even though they'll join your team, they will run around and do their own thing, more a liability to the team than offering any real contribution. And that's just fine too. And your play style is your play style. But I'm old fashioned to the point where if you're on a team, you work as a team. But I'm cynical, and an army is more than just one person, and a team is more than just one person, and the team is stronger together. But each to their own. As long as you're not getting everybody killed, which is a bummer. Seen that happen more than once in my time. Anyways, so that was my chat for my character build. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. And so this is I do highly recommend using mids. Mids Reborn or Pines. I've never used Pines, so I can't really say which one is better. I've always used mids. So whichever one you like. It is a helpful tool. There's no rule saying that you have to use it. But I mean, if you're a really good toon builder and you have the resources to do it, and you're not one to make a lot of mistakes in the build, then there's no real need to use mids or pines. But if you like to work up a build before you actually, apply it to a character just to see it on paper, and tweak it and things like that, mids and pines is a good resource. It'll allow you to build your character before you do it in game, so you can see on paper what potentially works and what potentially does not work. And just because it looks good on paper doesn't necessarily mean it's gonna do well. One of my in-game friends who's a solid character builder. I have my namesake, my in-game namesake, Helium 3. He built the initial character on that, and I've since nerfed it because, critting, doing 800 points of damage and critting 1,000 is, I think, OP. And I don't know how he did it, but I nerfed it because I don't like being overpowered unless it's a farm. Then, of course, you have to be as strong as possible. But most missions, doing 800 points of damage is, that's just over the top. That's too much. You don't need all that. And I do like the fact that on a lot of task forces and incarnate content, you could actually increase the difficulty above +4, which is very useful for those folks who, like the OP, who strive to be the best and things like. And there's that, if that works for you, that works for you. I don't like being overpowered, but I'm weird. If you like being OP, hey, that's really cool. But it's important to stay humble. Not everybody likes to be OP, and not everybody likes OP. So don't look down on others if they don't have the same, perspective and opinion as you do. Stay humble, stay true. Anyway, so I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording there, because that's all I really wanted to do. Is go over this build, have a little chat, and feel free to give me a holler if you have questions. There are probably better builders out there, but like I said, I might be able to answer some of your questions. and help you along the way. And if you contact me on Discord, if I have a build that might suit your needs, I'm happy to share it with you. Anyways, y'all have a great day. I am going to stop my recording and maybe run some content. Okay, y'all have a nice day.